Hey guys, I'm super excited to let you know that my team has created 2 communities and one-on-one coaching experiences for you to take your health to a much deeper level, your vitality, your relationships, your purpose, your business, your career, everything that you're working on to the nth degree of manifestation. You want to climb the mountain, we'll climb the mountain. If you want to go deeper in your breath work, we go deeper. Whatever it is that you want to design in your mind, you want to take your dreams to the highest level, we've got something for you, and there's limited space available. So I highly recommend clicking the link below and choosing which one is right for you. God bless.
Hey guys, Troy Casey, certified health nut, super psycho chicken of the universe here. We're about to have Dave Asprey from Bulletproof Executive, Bulletproof Coffee, Bulletproof brand on. I really admire what Dave has done for bringing a bit of technology and commercialism into the whole health movement and the practical side of navigating the modern world. So he made a movie about mold poisoning, mycotoxins. I was exposed to black mold for 3 years with my family. We've all had subsequent major issues, including brain fog. Took me 5 years to heal myself. I still see some remnants. I had neurological disorder and chronic fatigue and full-blown autoimmune. So very profound work there. You can get poisoned by your environment, but also a lot of foods, coffee, chocolate, corn, soy, anything that's stored in silos has the potential for mycotoxins, peanuts. And so he paved the way with that. One of his first books was how to clean up the brain for autistic children. And I know that's been doing well, and he's written 9 books since. And so Dave's just amazing, crusader for health and wellness. And I went to his Bulletproof conference. I thought that was excellent because he's really bringing in more than mainstream people that want to optimize and, aging people as well. And the essence of the Bulletproof conference that I picked up was really accelerating the mitochondrial function, and that is optimized with breath work, obviously, or optimized breathing mechanics, and of course, ice baths or ice and fasting. So this is something I've been doing. I've considered myself the endogenous biohacker, using all nature-based principles and to be able to activate that. And the research that I've shown has shown that, yes, I've been able to hack my own biology using ancient, esoteric, and modern wisdom. And so without further ado, we bring this interview with Dave Asprey. Take us through the Dave Asprey story for people that may, not be tapped into social media these days and know who you are.
Way back in my 20s. So this was, good God, 25, almost 30 years ago. I weighed 300 pounds. So I had arthritis in my knees since I was 14. And I had just chronic strep throats and sinus infections. I was on antibiotics just every month, at least once. It just would never leave me alone. And my brain was all over the place. I started to become successful in my career. Even during college, I'm trying to pay for my tuition. They keep increasing the price of tuition over and over and over. So I'm like, how can I do this? Well, I have access to the thing called Usenet. This was like Reddit before we had web browsers, a very early part of the internet. And only a couple of years ago, Google finally took all that archive offline. It's kind of the history of the internet. And I posted something saying I can sell a caffeine t-shirt. It says caffeine, my drug of choice. I did all my research. I talked to a caffeine researcher at a big university, just, emailed back and forth and figured out the molecular structure and the characteristics of trimethylxanthine and made this shirt. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to pay for my tuition. It's better than scooping ice cream at Baskin Robbins, which I also did for money. So I put it out there and I sold t-shirts to 14 countries the very first month that I did this. So this was, in retrospect, the first e-commerce. And I was written up in the Miami Herald and Entrepreneur magazine and all of these business publications, but hey, there's this kid, in a double extra large t-shirt with big puffy cheeks and glasses and, what looks like rosacea probably. But he's selling stuff on this interweb thing. And I mean, no one knew what it was. So I shut that down when I got tired of putting t-shirts in bags because, well, I was not a very good business person back then, apparently. And I went on to Silicon Valley and I had lost some of the weight and I tried every kind of diet. I got really desperate, really focused on this stuff. And then in Silicon Valley, I was a co-founder of the part of the company that held Google's first server. So it was, the Facebook came, and the company that I worked for became worth $36 billion in market cap. And so the part of the company I founded grew to $100 million a quarter in revenue. And I'm like 26 years old attending board meetings at this company. I'm not allowed to speak. That was the rule, but I could at least listen. And so it was this amazing time where you could see the world changing. And, Amazon came out and all this cool stuff happened. So I made my $6 million and I lost it 2 years later. But during that time, I just realized my brain is starting to misfire. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm afraid. I bought disability insurance. And I hacked the problem, but I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on it. And I got to know people through an anti-aging nonprofit group. Pretty soon they said, Dave, can you be president? And I'm president of this group. And there's people 3 and almost 4 times my age here who are acting younger than I am because they can pay attention. They aren't so tired. They're more resilient than I am. And I unpacked what had happened to me. The genetic things, the fact that I had toxic mold in my bedroom growing up, the fact that the low-fat, low-calorie diet that I ate while I was working out, an hour and a half a day, 6 days a week to lose the weight, that only made me get autoimmune issues and get sicker and stronger and still stay fat. To have a 46-inch waist when I started and when I finished that regimen was unbelievable to me. And I'm like, man, I'm having the chicken salad with no chicken and no dressing, and my friends are having double Western bacon cheeseburgers. And maybe I'm eating too much lettuce. And just one day I woke up and it was, hey, what I'm doing isn't working. I'm an engineer. I'm teaching people how to build the modern internet with distributed systems. And what you do on the internet is you control a system that you can't see. Like even right now we're talking and magically there's bits going all over the place through equipment that you don't know about, I don't know about, but magically it doesn't work. And if something is a problem, we can probably fix it without knowing what's in the middle. Well, what's in the middle here is our body. You put something in, whether it's light, whether it's temperature, whether it's anything else in your environment, food, dare I say, fear, whatever it is, you put it in and then you get a result. So you can look at the body as a black box. And I just started saying, I'm only going to do what works. And I'm going to start with what's supposed to work. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, I'll go to Tibet. I'll learn meditation from the masters. I will eat the opposite of what is supposed to work. I will try everything, but I'm going to get the data. And just using that engineering mindset, you know what? There's a lot more going on spiritually, emotionally, on the psychological side than most engineers would like to admit. But the stuff we've been told about how to be young, it didn't work because I saw people in their 80s who had more libido than I did in my 20s and were healthier and happier and stronger. And they're the ones calling me at 11:30 at night going, hey, can we talk about this cool thing? And you're like, how is this possible? Because I want to go to sleep and you don't. Like, where does this energy come from? Well, I have that energy now. And it's only getting stronger, which is crazy. But that's why I started biohacking. That's why I started the field of biohacking. That's where the name came from, was how do we hack this?
That's such a great story because most people just see the surface, your success, but you were dragged through the mud. And that's usually the trial by fire.
The success is a complete side effect. To be really honest, when I started Bulletproof, it was a little bit out of frustration. I said, I've accumulated all this knowledge. For almost 10 years, I've had experts come through every month and speak at this nonprofit group. I have learned from the world's best, and no one knows the stuff that I know about. And I know that if you do this stuff now, you age less quickly. You have better capabilities. You almost have superpowers. Not really, but sometimes maybe what looks like them anyway. And that if you have that early advantage, that the gap between you and your peers as you age gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So I sat down with my board at the nonprofit and I said, I think we should do a blog. And they argued for 3 months over what the URL should be. And I'm like, guys, I'm already one of the top 100 most influential cloud computing bloggers. I kind of know how to do this. And after a while, I just threw up my hands and said, fine, I won't do it as a nonprofit. I will do it as my own private blog. And the whole point of the blog was 5 people are going to read it. It's going to do for them what this knowledge has done for me. They're not going to have to spend a few $100,000 to hack their biology because they'll know what works. And I will have done the world a solid. Okay. I already made $250,000 a year. I already had stock options. I was a VP at a public company and I had 2 young kids. I did not need to start a company. And well, I'm like, oh, this is my blog. I guess enough people are reading this. Maybe some of them want to buy coffee that doesn't make them crash the way coffee does for me. And that was a product that had 0 market size for clean coffee. I said, well, someone has to care. And it turns out a lot of people cared and they could feel the difference just like I can. In fact, I measured the difference in my first book in the Bulletproof Diet, like a IRB approved study showing that coffee without toxins makes you faster mentally. Coffee with butter makes you faster mentally. We couldn't even measure MCT oil back then. And all of the stuff was real. The stuff that I was seeing, the stuff I saw having yak butter tea in Tibet, that was the inspiration for Bulletproof coffee. Like, hey, I'm just going to put stuff out there that doesn't exist. And to this day, in the main categories where Bulletproof is, we created 3 of the 5 categories. There was no functional coffee that for how you feel. Well, we made that. And Bulletproof coffee's, a couple 100 million cups of it later, it's going strong, right? Collagen protein was not a thing. And I made it into an industry category. I mean, there's been billions of dollars of value created because of that. And Forbes even gave Bulletproof an award for the most innovative new business, one of the top 20 most innovative businesses in the world. I'm like, wow. But this was only I had to make stuff I couldn't buy. And so it's never been about, the financial success side of things. Of course, I want to, take care of my family and all that stuff, but that's table stakes. And anything beyond that, it's just a license to create more change in the direction the world needs to go.
It just sounds like, your challenges, brought you to where you needed to be. One of the first recordings I ever heard of you, I've been a food activist for many years. I work with Dave Murphy from Food Democracy Now! And March Against Monsanto and Robert Kennedy Jr., et cetera. And so
Beautiful.
I've been in it for a while. And for you to, I think it was probably on Joe Rogan, to talk about, chuck some butter in there and you might want to make sure that the cows aren't eating GMO corn and glyphosate. And I thought, whoa, that's beautiful. And you're on these
Bulletproof coffee rocks Joe's world, man. He went all in on that stuff. I couldn't believe he just kept saying Bulletproof coffee, Bulletproof coffee. I'm like, wow, I'm so grateful. And then his friend decided to launch a competing business, and the next day I was a bad man. He went after my reputation for a while, but every time he said my name, I sold more coffee. So thanks, Joe, if you're listening. I appreciate you, brother. Can we talk about mold for a bit?
Please.
So toxic mold is a big thing, and because you've experienced it. I did the Moldy Movie, the documentary, moldymovie.com. It's free. I'm not trying to sell anyone anything. It's just, I spent $200,000 and a lot of time making that movie for a reason, and it was to do good. And so many people would say, it's all BS. I don't believe you, right? Like that can't have happened. And it's that toxic belief that can't happen, therefore it didn't. And this is what's holding back science. This is what's holding back, and people are saying, oh, the only cure for this pandemic thing is a vaccine, right? Like maybe the cure is just making humans so resilient that it isn't very impactful for us. Maybe we could fix our metabolisms, put down the potato chips, and maybe that's the cure. But that can't happen, or that won't happen. That didn't happen because it can't. And it's that mindset that's there with mold. So I interviewed a dozen doctors, including Dr. Amen. I think Dr. Hyman's in there. Yeah, he's in there. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Hyman actually had mold after this. And so many of the functional medicine people I know had it in their house because it's so common. And you go to somewhere like Sedona and say, oh, it's dry, I won't get mold. But it's actually worse in Arizona because desert mold is very aggressive. There's never any water. So as soon as there's water, it just completely goes crazy. And if you go to a place that's usually wet, it's like, I got time. I'll just kind of sneak in and just slowly grow. So you'll find that buildings that are moldy in Arizona are seriously moldy. And so the variance is high. There's lots of places with none and lots of places that are trash. Mm-hmm. People are like, what are you talking about? Well, I have an expert in the movie. I didn't have to tell people this because they didn't want to believe just me. 100 million buildings have toxic mold. And what happens with toxic mold, and this because you've been in there, is it's like a wet blanket over everything. So every step you take, everything you want to do, every decision you want to make gets harder. Everything feels like it's way more work than it actually is. And regulating your emotions becomes very difficult. So you feel ungrounded and you're like from 0 to angry in no time. and your ability to regulate your blood sugar and your stress hormones just goes out the door. So you're walking around going, why is that person saying that to me? And like their middle finger is overactive. And there's that. And then you're like, I'm so tired. I feel like I'm hungover. And you're just all over the place. And the spiritual effects of that, man, people who have toxic mold, I mean, they call it toxic for a reason, but I mean, it's pretty dark. Like everything you see has this lens of just darkness and blah on it. And it's so hard to know it's what's going on until you've experienced it a few times and until you realize, oh, that feeling like of dread, that's my body telling me that something's trying to kill me and it doesn't know what it is. So you have crazy dreams when you're in a place with mold. And you get all these weird symptoms. So people gain weight for no reason, suddenly come down with weird illnesses, can't get better. I'm like, smell the air, look around. Did you move into a new place? Are there water stains? It's so common, but it's just not in our national consciousness or global consciousness, and it needs to be. And that's why one of the companies I started, in fact, a couple of them, and Bulletproof makes mold-free coffee, because coffee, for 5 years, I had to quit drinking coffee because I would drink it and I would just like want to punch people 2 hours later, or I'd want to go to sleep, or I'd get massive cravings. And it's from the toxins in the coffee. So I found a way to make it clean. But another company called Homebiotic makes a probiotic you spray around your house that eats mold, and it eats mold toxins called mycotoxins as a fuel source. So you actually create the balance that's present in soil in your home. And for me, I inoculate everywhere, like anywhere I live. And certainly even if I go to a place that's got a little bit of mold, then I spray it around, and within 24 hours, I tolerate the place way better. And so you're like, what's going on here? Well, I start companies that make stuff I can't buy. I wanted something that would deal with mold. So I put an air filter in and I spray the Homebiotic, and it's not as good as going to a clean place, but it's as good as I can get for where I am. And that's part of that biohacking mindset, which is, look, how do we become resilient? And maybe I take the toxin binders, I take glutathione, and I do my ketone stuff with the brain octane. I do all that. And maybe I made myself more resilient, or maybe I changed the environment around me so that I could be more resilient because I'm taking less of a hit from my environment. And it's that combination of stop doing the things that make you weak and do more of the things that make you strong. But a lot of the time in the health world, and you know this because you've been in it for a long time, like, hey, I'm going to do the latest thing. I'm going to pick up even more heavy things. And you're like, hey, maybe you should try and get a good night's sleep. Because what's making you weak is the bad sleep. You don't need to pick up heavy stuff. You need to just chill. And maybe you should stop eating excessive kale or whatever the problem is before you start trying to do the next big thing. And for me, that was a big problem because I'm wired to always find the next big thing. But sometimes stop doing something that's bad before you do something that's good. I think that's missing.
So I wanted to back up. Just, put on a personal note, because that's a big part of my platform is, really what I'm going through. So my wife and I, we did get remarried again, and we've been back together. We moved into a beautiful place in Santa Monica, 20th Street in Santa Monica. Biggest place we moved into. Not a lot of 3 bedrooms in Santa Monica. Biggest place, most expensive. We all moved back together. Family was together. And then COVID hit. And then we moved out here, and the vortex is here. And I don't know if you study astrology, but the planets are in alignment with things like the Civil War, the Great Depression. Like, there's the biggest planetary alignments that haven't happened before, except for the last time, the biggest moments in history for one, and all the planets are happening at the same time. So we're going through stuff, and I was watching your Moldy movie, and I'm like, I saw Doc Amen talking about what he was talking about, and I filmed it and sent it to my wife, and I said, let's not eliminate this at all. I mean, let's eliminate this aspect, the mycotoxin poisoning potential. And she's had some candida issues over the years before, and so I think this definitely could be affecting her cognitive function, her mood swings, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to look.
It also causes candida. So make sure she knows that. If you have toxic mold in your environment, you're almost certain to have candida growing in your body. I don't exactly know why, but there's a very high correlation. So put her on some prescription antifungals. My experience has been that none of the natural stuff, even ozone and oregano oil and grapefruit seed extract, colloidal silver, all the usual suspects, they don't get candida. And especially if you've had toxic mold for a long time, do a month of fluconazole and monitor liver function, and it changes your brain, changes your life faster than anything that I know how to do with natural substances. And I'm all about do it naturally and use pharma when necessary. fluconazole is a game changer for people who've had mold for multiple years, especially with candida. I did have candida. It was a major issue for me.
I did Hape for about a year and a half, and I've worked with shamanic medicine in the Amazon since 2006, but I was not exposed to the Hape. The people I worked with used mapacho and they smoked it. When I got my hands on the snuff, I was like, wow, this stuff's really powerful. And then what it did to my brain and business, it basically soaked everything up to where I could start to feel it when I ended up doing too much of it and cycled off of it. I could feel it in my joints. It really dried up. So have you heard that before, Dave?
From Hape or from mold?
From Hape for mold and whatever remnants I had left.
I've heard of using mushrooms. I've heard of using ayahuasca. I've using the toad venom. And all of these people have talked anecdotally about it. And almost any of the hallucinogen family increases BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which causes nerves in the brain to grow. And they can increase nerve growth factor as well. And many of them are anti-inflammatory. So what you find is that part of healing from mold is remyelinating nerves, because your nerves are covered in this layer of insulating fat that's got a lot of choline in it. And mold puts holes in those. In fact, it's similar to some of the things that happen with Parkinson's and ALS. And in fact, my big book on mitochondria in the brain, I went into some of the chemistry of this. And most of the mycotoxins are very similar to cholesterol from a molecular perspective. They're small molecules and the body can't differentiate them. They're very hard to get rid of. So it knows there's a threat, but it can't find the threat. And it looks to find what the threat might be, which is one of the reasons you get all sorts of weird autoimmune stuff. The body's like, the cells in there, the immune cells are like, what if I, maybe it's that, maybe it's that, maybe it's that. And what's going on is it's none of those things. It's just something that's so small you can't see it. And then that fatty molecule melts in to your fat. It actually, it's like if you put dye in water, like blue dye, it permeates through everything. And the half-life of fat in your body is about 2 years, according to some research that I put out in the Bulletproof diet. So for 2 years, if you eat a high-fat diet that increases bile turnover, which means that your body basically every time you eat fat, you squirt out a little bit of bile, that bile is a precious resource to your body. It's hard to manufacture. So it recycles that bile and recycles the toxins. When you take activated charcoal, when you take lots of fiber, when you take some of the prescription binders of bile, like cholestyramine, for instance, especially if you take it before a meal, then when the bile squirts out into your digestive tract, it gets captured and then you poop it out and your body has to make fresh new bile. So you're increasing bile turnover, you're increasing the turnover of fats in your body, and you do that at the same time you're eating good fats and you're driving growth factor. So now all of a sudden the brain fog is clearing up because you're getting rid of the toxins that are excreted and you're making more of the myelin sheath. And you can stimulate that with some other things like fasting, with exercise. One of the supplements that I put together for Bulletproof called Neuromaster, it increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor 4 times more than exercise. That one comes from the fruit of coffee, not the beans of coffee. And these plant medicines, some of them are very, very powerful in driving this. So now what you've got is, I'm going to deal with all the trauma, all the icky feelings that came about from the toxic mold. I mean, people have nightmares. People see ghosts. They see demons. They have like bad visions. I'm not even making this up. In fact, one of the toxic molds is called alternaria because it causes altered states. And we're not even talking about the LSD stuff, which is also a mold toxin. That's not typically one you'll find in your house. But people with mold will report seeing shadows. Their actual visual acuity goes down. You can't see shades of gray. That's one of the diagnostic things. And out of the corner, you're like, what's that? What's that? And you kind of feel like there's stuff and maybe it's real. If you ask the shamans, some of them will say it is, some of them will say it isn't. Whatever it is, you got a perception thing going on because your ability to perceive the world around you is damaged. You're sensitive to light. You have a hard time just bringing in light and sound because your brain doesn't have enough energy because it's been poisoned. And it doesn't have enough energy to actually sort out the signal from the noise. So noise gets through and it looks like a signal to you. It sound familiar?
Oh my, dude, I was in 2013.
You think you're nuts.
Oh my God, man. My wife, one of my businesses went down and I was on the computer and, I was learning how to monetize my online presence and she was like, make more money. And I was like, I don't even know who I am. I was like, I was on the computer. I could feel the heat. I had 5 smart meters on that apartment wall. So it was a building in Santa Monica, tall penthouse, moved in the summer, dry as a bone, white, didn't think anything. Now in recollection, talking to my neighbors and the sicknesses that everybody had over the years, and a guy 2 doors down had MS. He was an attorney.
Oh yeah. Everyone in the building is sick, and you don't see mold most of the time. That's why mold testing is such a big thing. I won't lease a place or buy a place until I do mold testing. I just bought a house here in Victoria where I live, so I can be a little bit closer. We're opening an Upgrade Labs and a Bulletproof cafe with my office upstairs because, hey, you got to have somewhere to eat. So I'm doing it up here, same as we've got in LA. But the house that I said I'm going to move, we're going to keep our farm, we're going to keep raising our own animals, but I'm going to kind of have 2 locations. And we bought the house. It had already been inspected. The inspection appears to have been falsified. But once we got in there, we're like, oh, tearing it down. And that was not the plan. But hey, when you find mold in a place, you have to remediate. And this was so much mold, we couldn't remediate it. The house we're in now, I knew it was moldy when I bought it, and we spent $40,000 on fixing it. Otherwise, we couldn't find a house without mold. It's that common. So you have to test. You have to know what it is, and especially in your sleeping area. When I look back on this, I lost a bunch of my weight in my kind of late 20s. And then I moved into a condo, and suddenly I gained 30 pounds. And my partner at the time, she gained a ton of weight and started having weird dreams and all this. I didn't know about mold yet at the time. And after we sold the place, when I was just checking out to see if we had anything, I was like, yeah, there was tons of water when we moved in under the carpet. So we pulled the carpet out, we put down hardwood, and then there was water under that. We pulled it up. It turns out the wall where a headboard was covered in black slimy mold on the backside of it. That's Stachybotrys. But it was from a neighbor's leaking water heater in a condo. Like we had no control or knowledge of that until after I'd moved out. But I look back on that, I'm like, man, that explains everything, right? My dog, the dog I'd grown up with, my parents said, hey, can you watch the dog for a week? Within 3 days, the dog has pneumonia, almost dies. Yeah, strep throat, pneumonia, chronic respiratory stuff, mold. And it's so predictable, but only if you know it. And that was why the documentary is so important. And that's why getting mold out of our food is important. That's why getting mold out of our schools is most important.
Oh, huge.
Yeah, it's an issue. So I'm happy that you got the experience of it because you're influencing a lot of people. And ultimately that experience will teach you about the depths of where you can go when something poisons your biochemistry. And there's an energetic aspect to mold as well. So if you're doing, the shamanic training, I've done Alberto Villoldo's, at least entry-level stuff. I've done, meditation for masters in Tibet and alternative things, mostly because I'm curious about them, right? And I'm willing to try it. Worst it'll do is not work. And maybe I'll learn something that I don't know. And mold has it's a distributed intelligence. It's just a very slow distributed intelligence. And so are bacteria. And unfortunately, we're on the side of bacteria because our cells are controlled by ancient bacteria that are inside of them called mitochondria. So if you think about it, what's the ancient enemy of bacteria? It's mold. They've been fighting for 2 billion years for dominance of the earth. It's no wonder that with us as bacteria-powered creatures, when we're in mold's world, it's like, hey, here's some antibiotics. Here's some other stuff. Like, watch what that does. And when you die, I'll eat you. And like, I don't really like that. But that's kind of how Mother Nature sets it up because she's not very nice.
Dave, Dave, you got time out. You got to do a comic book on this. Seriously,
it would be a good one. But this is it. Like, this is how it works. It's ancient evil, and it's people are saying, oh, don't eat animals and whatever else. I'm like, wait a minute. Have you seen Mother Nature? Have you seen the wasp that paralyzes the spider and lays its eggs inside the spider and lets it just sit there while the larvae eat their way out? Like, Mother Nature is not vegan. I'm sorry. That is not how it works. I throw my scraps out to the chickens and man, they'll pick a bone clean if you let them because they're actually omnivorous. Mm-hmm. And so I look at the system of life and all that stuff. We live in a world with mold. We want to not let mold get into us until we're dead, at which point it can go to town. And that's an important principle. And you got to live that way. The world is not a safe place. You're going to die. But if you walk around being afraid all the time, you're just going to hate your life and then you'll die. So be aware and just, live. The true dark glasses, it's very interesting. People who are mold sensitive are almost always light sensitive. So if you're finding you're overwhelmed,
I was.
totally.
Not just the brain fog. I was just overwhelmed. Bright light, loud noises. I had noise cancellation headphones that the autistic kids wear.
Yeah.
And
You're not alone, man. It happened to me. It happened to everyone. And it turns out it's happening to more people now than ever because these bright white LEDs, they have this flicker that you can't see, but your brain can see, and it has to take energy to filter it out. And if you're low on energy because you have toxic mold or because you're eating the wrong foods or whatever the problem is, you're not going to like it. So TrueDark makes a daytime glasses, I don't even have with me, for filtering out monitors and bright lights overhead. People eat that. Even though people take those things, when they eat stuff, you can see changes in your blood sugar based on that. And then TrueDark makes these things, which are patented because it turns out blocking blue light doesn't do enough for sleep. It's one of the 4 kinds of light that matters. You got to block all of them, and even the angle of the light matters. So TrueDark is a good way to do it. And then the other thing I'm doing that we haven't talked about much is 40 years of Zen. And so having traveled to Tibet, having gone to South America in the Andes and done ayahuasca before you could do it as a tourist, I kind of went down there and said, I want to try this. And they're like, you're white. I'm like, yeah, I noticed, but I want to try this. No, that's for locals. No one would ever do that. And so I finally convinced them, and they found someone for me. And I did that, I think, in 1999. And
wow.
After all of that and 20 years of doing neurofeedback, I finally just hired the neuroscientists, and we developed our own hardware and software for connecting you to your brain and working and doing the deep trauma release and doing actually increases in voltage in the brain. And what I found out that's so in alignment with what you teach is that, look, you get your physical body working, get rid of the mold, eat the right foods, cyclical ketosis, don't eat inflammatory stuff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you get at least some of that dialed in, and then there's enough energy left to do the personal development work, to do the heavy lifting of becoming a better human being, of resetting or reprogramming the automated defenses in the body. Because guess who's in charge of those? It's not you. It's the mitochondria. And this ancient network of a quadrillion bacteria sensing the environment around you going, please don't harm my petri dish, because you're a petri dish from the perspective of those bacteria that are like, haha, we're the puppet masters. Yeah. And those little bastards, man, if they're threatened by mold or anything else, they will make you feel like crap, and they'll make you just walk around wanting to punch people, and they'll mess up your life. So you get them powered up enough, and then you can reprogram them so that they stop freaking out about bullies. They stop being reactive, and you can actually have a better view of reality. For me, having tried the fasting in a cave and all those other things, the most important, most powerful thing for me has been neurofeedback. And I've seen more and experienced more there than I have with holotropic breathing or with plant medicines, where you go really deep, but when you're done, you're no longer reactive. Instead of becoming aware, you just don't react anymore. So that for me has been a major gift, because I'm really much less of an asshole than I used to be.
And I'm over here working on the same thing.
It's a constant evolution through multiple lives, if you believe in that kind of stuff, until you get there. But I've had more progress more quickly from having a lie detector tell me when I'm lying to myself than any other way. So I opened a facility that does that. And so that's worth mentioning as well.
And let's say, what's the biggest, most surprising learnings over the past year or few years? Because you've been at it, drank ayahuasca in 99. That's when I started practicing Vipassana meditation and really cleaning up my life and getting on this journey. So the last few years, I mean, I know you're paving a way with a lot of this knowledge, but tell us something new that you're discovering.
Well, in the last few years, what I think that hasn't happened the way that I would have liked is fasting, intermittent fasting should be a much bigger deal than it is. And having talked to, God knows, thousands of people and interacted with probably hundreds of thousands of people through my media, what I hear so much is from the kind of people that I grew up with, right? My parents' friends, people who aren't biohackers. And they're all saying, it's too hard. I can't do it. And understanding and unpacking the psychology and the emotions of fasting versus the actual practice of fasting. It's very easy to sit there and say, it's very simple, guys. Just don't eat anything till 2:00. That's intermittent fasting, right? Well, it it's just not going to work for the vast majority of people with 50 extra pounds, right? It doesn't. And it's because they will never do it, because they get a message that says, I'm going to die. And that was why I wrote Fast This Way, the book that's coming out in January, because there's a message that's coming through, and it comes from those ancient mitochondria, and it sounds so real and it sounds so true. And there is a way to get through it. And one of the ways is understanding the nature of the message. And the other way is, okay, how do I get the effects of fasting, and how do I turn off those feelings of hunger so that I just don't experience the pain and I get the metabolic benefits? So I went into this from the perspective of how do we make it easy instead of how do we do it? And that's something that I missed. I talked about, bulletproof intermittent fasting in 2014. I talked about protein fasting, 1 day a week, eat zero protein or as close to zero as you can get. And it has a very different effect. You can just go 24 hours without eating. But hey, if you've got 50 pounds to lose and you're pre-diabetic, you're not going 24 hours without eating, because you'll get fired on that day, because you'll yell at people when you get hypoglycemia the way I used to in my 20s, right? It's okay to acknowledge that, hey, it's a big bar right there for you. So what I think I missed in leading the biohacking community there is that, okay, how do you do this and be a father or a mother and have your head on straight and be able to carry that burden? And maybe you're dealing with toxic mold. Maybe you can't sleep, your hormones are all over the place, or whatever the heck's going on. How do you do it then? And so writing a book that said, here's the spiritual thing that you're probably missing on. Here's the emotional thing, the psychological thing. Oh, and there's some physical stuff. The physical stuff is the easy stuff. It's the other stuff that's hard. And for me, because I put my head down and I'll try anything, right? And I was willing to spend all of my money and all of my time, all of my resources to not feel the way that I was feeling, right? So for me, it was, all or nothing. I was so just not good. And I'd done it for so long, and the constant pain in my body and all the emotions. I'm I'm all in, right? Most people aren't there, but how do you help from that perspective? So for me, that was what I missed, was that it's not as easy as I thought it was, because I cared so much. So how do we make it easy? And that's what's missing from biohacking in general. And this is my offering for that, is Fast This Way. And it's because there are hacks for fasting, and some of them are cognitive and some of them are stuff you can eat while you're fasting that are going to quantitatively give you the benefits of fasting without causing the pain that's hormonal. The pain is caused by ghrelin. It's caused by CCK. And these are hackable substances in the body. So what if we just did that and you lost 30 pounds, and then you're like, okay, now I can go all morning without any food, and that's okay. Man, if someone had done that for me when I weighed 300 pounds, I would have hugged them. It would have been such a big difference.
Yeah, and that is a big difference, making it accessible and simple for people and practical in the modern world. Because 1,000 years ago, you get the calling and you go out to the mountains and you do your thing. But now we're not living in that world. You got your cell phone to distract you.
You do. And I mean, there's other stuff. Like, we used to have rites of passage, and I'm a little worried. We already had a bunch of I don't know, wusses, cowards, people who've never been in a fight in their life. Right. And when I was growing up, I got lots of fights because we had bullies, right? And they'd come after me and I'd sit on them. It was pretty straightforward, right? But the first time you do that, you feel like you're going to die, and it scares the crap out of you. And it feels like there's people who are like, hey, I'm never going to die. Nothing bad's ever going to happen to me. And those are not true stories. The end of the universe will happen. Even if you're an anti-aging guy who's going to live to at least 180, hey, if a comet hits the planet, I'm probably not going to live. That's okay. Right. Just to acknowledge that at some point, there's an end, and to not fear it. So right now, with all the pandemic and all this stuff, there's so much fear in the world. And I think hacking fear is a major thing. And it's the same fear that says, if I don't have breakfast, I'll starve. And that's bullshit.
Are you talking about biohacking snowflake-ism?
Man, maybe there's a way, but I think the way is actually a rite of passage. I think we take our young people, men and women, or girls and boys, whatever you want to call them, when they're around 13. And yes, you take them out and you toss them in a cave, just like I did in Fast This Way. Or you have a ceremony with, knives and arrows and fire and stuff like that, and community. And you basically tell them, you need to man up, or woman up, as the case may be. Right. But you have power, right? And by telling people, we just got this for you. It's okay. We don't have winners. We don't have losers. That kind of stuff is not working. So I think that we can make highly resilient people who are so resilient that they look in the mirror one day and they're not a snowflake anymore. And that is a big part of my mission, because if you do not know how to feel courage, it's the same thing as how do you lift a heavy thing? Well, you practice and you grow muscle. And how do you face your fear? For me, my biggest fear, I didn't know this until I was 30 because I hid it from myself like most people do. I was afraid of being alone. So I'm like, all right, I'm also afraid of starving because I used to weigh 300 pounds. I'd eat 6 times a day. And if I didn't eat, I'd want to kill people. I've ended meetings at 11:45 instead of noon. Go, guys, I'm sorry, I'm going to the cafeteria. If you have another meeting, I'm going to kill you, or another, 15 minutes. I'm going to kill one of you and eat you. So I'm ending the meeting. I'm going to go downstairs and that's that. And I couldn't handle it. Right. All of that was BS. So how did I believe that to be true, that I was going to die if I didn't eat? Right. And how is it that people believe they're going to die if? Because it's almost all BS. And we've got to teach that to people. And what you do is what I did. I'm like, all right, I'm afraid of loneliness and starving. I'll sit in a cave for 4 days where there's no one for 10 miles. I'm lonely. And there's no food. And what am I going to do? I'm going to have to face it. Right. And if I just go completely bonkers, no one's even going to see me. And that's okay. Right. So somehow we've got to create experiences for our young people so that they can just get strong. And strong is a mental thing and a physical thing at the same time.
Hallelujah on that. That's right up my alley and what I talk about as well. That rites of passage. And so what do you think is the biggest challenge? I loved your statistics early on in the COVID virus. And I actually,
I was so right.
Look, man, intuitively, I'm an intuitive guy for the most part, for, lack of better, hours of research, but I trust my intuition. I made a video early on that. When you did yours a couple of weeks later, I was like, bam, at least I know you're going to do the research. That's why I love you, Dave, because you not only hack, but you crack the code and all the information. And so, yeah, what's our biggest way out of here? Like, how do you see it rolling out? And
a couple weeks in, after when we first started all this pandemic stuff, I just looked at all the research on the other pandemics. And with SARS, they originally said, 5% death rate, it's the end of the world. And they sold a lot of whatever the medicine they said was going to work for that was. I think Rumsfeld got rich off that one. Or maybe that was
Tamiflu.
Yeah, Tamiflu, thanks. And you look at that and you're like, okay, 2 years later with no press release, like actually the death rate was closer to 0.16% or whatever it was. And I said, all right, so based on history, recent history, the last 4 pandemics, I'm predicting a 65x reduction in the actual death rate compared to what they're saying now. Because right now they're comparing it to the 20 people who've been tested. And we really know that 200,000 people have it. They just haven't tested them. And what's happening right now is that there's these amazing things, number of cases confirmed, and it's skyrocketing, and the death rate is flat and down. So what that means is the entire time, the death rates they were telling us were just not real. They were fantasies. They were based on bad data. And I had this thing in one of the videos on my Instagram called pandemic math. And it's the actual number of cases. It's a magical number we can never know. But over time, you get closer and closer to understanding it. And what we know now is that a whole lot of people have this, to the point that the death rate is exceptionally low on average. And the vast majority of people who pass away from it were already in the last 1 or 2 years of their life. If it didn't get them, it was going to be flu or cancer or diabetes, Alzheimer's. They were already 80 plus and not well. So given all of that, the way out of this is to take a deep breath and say, all right, why am I feeling this much fear given the reality? And then the first thing people say is, but people have long-term effects from this virus. I'm like, newsflash, people have long-term effects from every virus. This is what happens. Ever heard of Epstein-Barr? Ever heard of mono? Right? Ever heard of herpes? Right? So there's all kinds of viruses that do this. And what do we do for those people? I know, because I was one of those. I had chronic fatigue syndrome. I had fibromyalgia. I had toxic mold poisoning. You know what you do? You fix the metabolism. You have biohack. You fix your mitochondria, and magically you get better. And if that doesn't work, you do the advanced biohacking. Use the light therapy stuff. Use stem cells. Use the stuff. I've spent $1 million hacking my biology, and I've written books about it. We have the tech. If you think you're going to die from whatever the thing is, I guarantee you that there's 25 things you don't know about that crazy innovators have figured out that's worked. And there are people who have cured every incurable disease. And all the things that are supposed to be impossible are not impossible. You just have to know where to look. And you might have to go through a lot of pain to find it. So from that perspective, you're concerned you might get a virus and you might feel bad afterwards. I almost feel like we should go back to the rites of passage.
Well, this is the rites of passage by default, Dave. We get to go back to it. Oh, you didn't wake up when you were 13, or the bar mitzvah didn't do it for you? Okay, here's a pandemic. Wake up. It's your time now that you're 50 or 45 or 30, whatever. So that
said, people are afraid, and it's okay to feel fear. It is not okay to be a coward. And those are different things, right? The people who have courage, they feel the fear and they do it anyway, right? And the fear here isn't justified based on the math. It just isn't, right? Self-care is justified. The things that we know reduce your likelihood of going to the hospital, like, oh my God, vitamin D. Every health expert I know, including me, said that at the beginning, and we all got banned on it for social media, or from social media for saying that. You're like, what? Okay, vitamin C, we know that works. There's herbs, we know that those things work to reduce all viral infections by 20%. And I've done things about those. And then you get a warning letter that says you can't talk about it. So in fact, that's why I started sending more emails. I'm like, guys, sign up for an email list. Because when I send email, daveasprey.com/uncensored is where you sign up. I'll send you stuff that I can't put on my blog, right? Because there's very little censorship in email. And it's crazy where we ended up. But all the things that do work were banned in the first really 2 weeks because we didn't know anything. So I think it's crazy pants what's going on now. And I think truly that we can hack our own fear. We can make ourselves understand, okay, yeah, if I'm the only one not wearing a mask, am I going to die? No. But you can also say, look, maybe just to reduce the fear from all these people around me who are clearly living in trauma, putting a mask on is just easier, and it's okay, right? And to not judge yourself. Don't be, the guy who keeps the airplane from taking off because you're going to be militant about it. There's no win for you or anyone else in that. So you can be calm, you can be compassionate, you can recognize people have fear, and you can also recognize that this is BS and work to stop it. Because right now the cure, even though it's not a cure, of this somehow, first we're going to flatten the curve. What happened to that? We already did that, but now everyone's still locked down. It's just not working. So the cure is not worth it because it's worse than the illness itself. And once we recognize that, we can all just wake up one day and say, you know what, every year some people die from diseases. This may be a little worse than some, maybe not as bad as Ebola, but we've got this. And then we move forward with our lives. And that sitting around for 2 years and doing this to our kids, doing this to our entrepreneurs, doing this to small businesses, destroying the economy, it's just not worth it, right? It is going to cause famine in parts of the world. It's not there.
What I got from that is the cure is courage. Dave Asprey, it's been wonderful having you on the show. You are awesome, brother.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate your work. And I would appreciate it if people listening, if you're thinking about fasting, check out Fast This Way, fastthisway.com. I'm in that season where authors ask for help and say, if you're going to read the book, if you order it now, it helps my publisher know how many to order. And so I would appreciate your support. If you like this interview, I promise you thousands of hours went into my book. It was better than this interview, even though this was an awesome interview.
This has been fascinating. You're amazing. I'll have you on again because I don't even think we scratched the surface. You're an extremely powerful dude, well-researched, very successful in business. I really give it up to you for what you've done for the movement. I appreciate you. I look forward to coming back to Bulletproof Conference and then seeing how I can help or affiliate or get your fasting book out there. I think it's very important work that you're doing. I applaud you, and I thank you so much, Dave. I love you. You're an awesome brother, man.
Well, speaking of the conference, because obviously conferences all got canceled this year, we're putting on a virtual conference, biohackingconference.com, October 10th, and there's thousands of people coming, and I'm doing some really special community building stuff around biohacking this year. And the topic is how to be resilient when the fit hits the shan. And we've got Jay Shetty, who just wrote Think Like a Monk, Maria Shriver, who does Sunday Paper and is just a powerful person, as well as Mark Hyman, and just tons of things about biohacking. So that's at biohackingconference.com. It's pretty cool.
So there you have it, guys. Dave Asprey, amazing human being. He has paved the way commercially with Bulletproof, and he told me that was by default. He was trying to solve his own problems: obesity, mycotoxins, mold exposure, mycotoxins in the coffee he was drinking, all sorts of challenges. And he's a super, super intelligent human being that basically cracked the code, basically hacked his way into the knowledge, put it all together, and healed himself. And he's out there sharing as much as he can with the world. He's got some great projects going on. He's got many books he's written, and we cover that all in this broadcast. And I hope you guys enjoy it. It's action-packed. Please share it with as many people. Anybody that you know that's suffering from these mystery diseases, these autoimmune kind of weirdness, can't lose the weight, they're sensitive to light, et cetera, et cetera. Share this podcast, this broadcast with people. And I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. And Dave Asprey is an awesome human. I'm glad I can share him with you. God bless, guys.
Hey guys, I'm excited to let you know that my team has developed one-on-one coaching as well as 2 different health communities that you can choose from. It's all there to upgrade your mastery in your life and your dedication to your life. The invitation with me is always to go deeper. So we've got one-on-one experiences, deep on the land, climbing these mountains, jumping in the cold waters, everything to turn your body on to the highest level so that you can live the life of your dreams. So click the link below and we'll see you soon.